Atlanta. This is a special edition of Closer Look. I am Lois Rices. I'm not Lois. I'm Rose Scott, and this is our, okay, go ahead. I am Rose Scott, and this is our monthly live broadcast of Coffee Conversations in partnership with the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. Today we are in the Emmett Park neighborhood inside, wait for it, Stereo. Woo. All right. Y'all was a little lame on the clapping, but that's okay. Inside, wait for it, Stereo.
There it is.
Located at 900 DeKalb Avenue Northeast. There are a lot of people here. There's been this many people here since. There's never been as many people here. So we are very excited about that. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, Caleb, right?
Well, I mean, this is a good one. It's a good turnout.
By the way, Stereo is located at 900 DeKalb Avenue. Yes, that DeKalb Avenue with no more potholes, right? Remember those days? Yes. And as we do with all our coffee conversations, the topics are all about the community, the quality of life for where you and everybody else lives. Today's topic is all about transit and mobility, from light rail or not on the Beltline to ensuring transit is equitable throughout all the neighborhoods here in Atlanta, meaning that when we talk about equity, what does that really mean? We'll talk about that a little bit later in the program, but as we do, and I promise I will not pick on the folks with the scooters on the Beltline. I've been warned not to do that. But as always, when we begin coffee conversations, it's with the folks behind the coffee, or in this case, cafe shop. So let's welcome in co-owner Caleb Willis of Stereo. Welcome.
Hey, Rose.
Let's begin with the beginning because
Okay.
this is kind of a unique establishment. I love the turntables back here. You
Sure.
got vinyl. That is all my jam.
Yeah,
What's
mine
the
too.
concept? Yes, your jam too?
Yeah.
What's the concept?
Well, this is the third rebrand of a coffee shop here in Emmett Park. Hopefully this one will be the last rebrand we do here. It's a fun little spot we have next to one of our other establishments, our pizza place, Lloyd's. We've had the coffee shop open since 2018. But I'd say January, the end of January, we
Yeah.
decided to make the plunge and make it more of a kind of a music concept on top of our just daily coffee shop.
Yeah.
It's been a really good kind of merger.
Why this location?
Well, we already had the location, first of all, so that wasn't a
Yeah.
complicated decision. But we were a coffee shop that closed at 3 p.m. every day.
Mm-hmm.
And the music was kind of something we kind of wanted to introduce to it a little more than we were already doing. And opening in the evenings and kind of doing like a listing bar was kind of what made sense.
So the vibe during the day is a little bit different than the vibe in the evening and late nights, right?
Sure, it's a little more traditional coffee shop in the daytime. We're not trying to reinvent coffee or anything like that. It's just a pretty basic, straightforward, good coffee shop. We like to think that. Started off kind of as like a clubhouse for ourselves and our staff next to our other establishment. And it's been a fun journey, but now adding the rebrand of Stereo, music in the evenings and things like that, it's just been a real special place.
When I spoke to Ian doing a site check, he said to me, he said, I wouldn't tell anyone to get into this business if they think they're going to make money.
Sure. I get asked that question all the time, and I'm like, yeah, are you sure you want to do this?
Really?
Yeah.
So then why are y'all doing it?
Well, it's too late now, but it's been fun, but it is tough. It's not for everybody. I don't know. But we do have fun, and again, it's a lot of work. We've been in this neighborhood for over 10 years now with a different concept, so this kind of made sense for us to kind of do this here. We've had 4 places open in Emmett Park. This is the 4th one. So
Now, not that it's my ego, but this is the part of the conversation where we talk about the beverage of the day.
Oh yeah, I was prepped for this. Yeah, there's. I was told at 7:45 this morning. My business partner came up with the Rose Scott.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah,
now what is in the
It's
Rose
our
Scott?
in-house honey and lavender latte.
Y'all like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably with a little custom latte art on top.
Custom latte art.
Well, we'll see. Maybe, but the next one this order, we'll find out.
Let's talk about your coffee and your beverages for a moment. All locally sourced, all of it in terms of the beans, where you get it from, and
Sure, we use a company that's we've been using from day one here, called Radio Roasters.
Mm-hmm.
They are indicator kind of on the edge of Avondale, where they have their roasting and coffee shop out there, right across from the DeKalb Farmers Market.
Yeah.
Great spot. It's been a great fit from day one.
Let's talk about being a business owner in the Inman Park neighborhood. You all are kind of close to the Beltline, kind of, sort of.
Sure.
Do you all pay that Beltline tax that some of these businesses have to pay because you're kind of adjacent to the Beltline?
There's definitely a process to getting open with our previous businesses and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be surprised how much gets covered in your aesthetic and things like that to get passed. But yes, I mean, you definitely are part of, unavoidably a part of taxes and things like that. So.
What are you hiding, Caleb? Are you hiding something?
No.
You really want to say
no.
something else, Caleb?
No,
I feel
no,
like
no,
you
no.
really want to.
No, Inman Park has been great to us. It's really grown. It's, was where we started, like I said. Completely, parts of it has changed. We've opened and closed a business here.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a great place. It just kind of feels like we have a business indicator also. I can't really explain it. It's just been like just home. And I used to live just on the outskirts here too.
So you've seen changes in and around this community.
Oh yeah.
Some you like, any that
The
are
landscape,
concerning?
the landscape here has definitely changed.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. I think most of it's for the good, but it's more populated now. You can tell there's no avoiding it. The being adjacent to the Beltline, or the entrance to most of the Beltline. So it's in this area. It's wild. It can get a little. Our other business, it really feels it on the weekends.
Is that good or bad?
It's good.
Yeah?
It's good for business for sure. But it's just hectic. It brings in a lot of people that don't live in the area, come in and.
Is that bad?
No, can be. How about this? It can be annoying at times.
So people that live in a community, they aren't annoying?
The people in the community.
What you saying, Caleb?
How about this?
I'm trying to let you get
it's
out
a
of
very
this,
proud
Caleb.
neighborhood association, and I understand why. And it's been.
Now, what does that mean?
And it's been, it's never been challenging, but there's just been it's a concerning neighborhood association, and it's and I understand it. There's a lot going on here, and there's people that've been here forever, and they've had their homes here for so long, and this and that. They've kind of seen a lot of changes that they may or may not have wanted, and I get that. But the growth has just been kind of something that is like, oh, okay, we're doing that in this day. Okay, that's cool. A lot of stop signs, a lot of new stop signs added. I've noticed that a lot lately. But for the most part, I feel like Inman Park has really kind of kept its it's aesthetic.
So let me ask you this. What do you think is the identity of this neighborhood, of this community?
The identity. Well, I feel like they have a. What's the word? They have a. There's proud is not the word. Pride, I guess. I don't know. It's like it's a little like protective almost. I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's a tricky one. It's because I know several people here, and like we see a lot of them in our businesses, and then we don't see a lot of them in our businesses too.
Do you feel like you get a lot of support from the community? Would you like a lot more people to come out from the community?
I believe so. I believe so. I see a lot of faces that I'll see in neighborhood meetings and things like that. That's always good. And like I said, we've been here for a while, so I know a lot of the faces, and a lot of them do come and spend their time and their money with us and things like that. Very supportive, I feel, for the most part. We've never really had any kind of issues personally for our businesses, things like that.
Are you comfortable in talking about any challenges or concerns you have with the Beltline, and if there's going to be light rail on the Beltline, and would that help or hurt your establishment?
Oh, sure. No, I think it all would help. We're here on DeKalb Avenue, and there's nothing across the street from us except a MARD train going by literally right now, back and forth. So I welcome any kind of change that's going to definitely bring walkability and, maybe some more parking. But we're smack dab in the middle of 2 stations too. So I don't know how valuable it is to our business, but I do feel that like changes in walkability and if there was a MARTA station even closer, I'm sure we would feel it.
Yeah.
But I welcome all of that kind of change with public transportation for sure.
Where do you see this community in, say, I don't know, I usually ask the 5-year question, but I'd say maybe 2 years, because development is rapid, so.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to, there's the multi-use buildings that kind of pop up everywhere, and you can kind of see it about to happen, and I think there's a few more planned nearby, maybe not directly in Inman Park, but I understand the density of them and why they happen, but definitely, we were relocated originally because of one of them that's in the middle of Inman Park. Mm-hmm. So, that took a little bit to rebound from that, but we're back. And, I don't feel that a lot more can happen in Inman Park. I feel like it's kind of running out of space, and I feel like its charm. And like I said, the people in the neighborhood are kind of putting their foot down about a lot of things.
Oh, I've heard.
Yeah, and mostly good for sure. And I hope they do, keep it kind of mostly what it is now. But I understand being an entrepreneur and seeing how things are happening. It's just some things are out of your control, and it's just going to happen.
All right. You all then plan to be here next 2 to 5 years, hopefully?
Well, that's what our lease says for now. So we've, fortunately have a pretty flexible landlord here, and we've been able to extend it early, and so we're here for a while for sure.
How many employees do y'all have?
Ooh, good question. Well, we probably have around 100 total in our company.
Yeah.
But here, there's only like about 6 people, and then our coffee shop next door has about 12 or 13, I would say.
Do they mostly bike, walk, drive?
Both. Yeah. I mean, come like 4 o'clock, half of them will pull up either on like a bike or a scooter. And we don't actually let them park on property, so I don't know if they are driving or walking. So I'm assuming they're parking down the street, walking.
Caleb, you are an interesting dude. Caleb Willis, co-owner of Stereo. Thank you so much. Listen, best of luck to everyone here, and I really appreciate you allowing WABE and Closer Look to be here.
Perfect.
I want you to stand by because our next segment, you ready for it?
Yeah.
It's about the Beltline.
Okay.
Rail or no rail? Ooh. You can pick a side.
Gotcha.
Or you can go and hide, either way you want to. Thank you so much, Caleb. Yeah. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for doing this here. I appreciate it.
All right. We're back in a moment. Stay tuned.
Support for WABE comes from Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta, a proud sponsor of Coffee Conversations. Rose Scott and Closer Looks Coffee Conversations is broadcast live today from 1 to 2 p.m. from Stereo, where Rose discusses important community issues and matters that matter most. Thank you for listening to Closer Looks Coffee Conversations, sponsored by the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta.
Thursday, April 4th is 404 Day.
That's right. It's a citywide celebration of Atlanta.
I'm David Perdue.
And I'm Mark Kendall.
And we're the hosts of What's Good Atlanta, a new podcast that also celebrates Atlanta by bringing you the city's best uplifting news each week.
Like the fact that WABE will be at the 404 Day block party. You can join us for a live taping of What's Good Atlanta at 3 p.m. at Monday Night Garage.
Go to wabe.org/events to learn more.
It's where I learned everything I know.
WABE. This is 90.1 FM, and for those of you who are familiar with blues names such as B.B. King and Sonny Boy Williamson and Howlin' Wolf, you're in for a treat if you join us tonight at 10 o'clock, because you'll hear some artists blues-wise that you've never heard before, sometimes exclusively here from WABE.
You're listening to Closer Look live from Stereo for this month's Coffee Conversation, broadcast in partnership with the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. Believe it or not, I am Rose Scott, and we are in the Inman Park neighborhood. And today it is all about transit and mobility. Now, some news from earlier in the week when Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens announced 4 new infill stations, including Murphy's Crossing. And if you don't know what an infill station is, it's not a complete MARTA station, but it's like a smaller MARTA station, which is ironically, because Stereo is right across from the MARTA rail tracks. And also understand this, folks, when we talk about the Beltline, and I know, depending on whom you ask, on what day of the week, and whether or not the moon is in line with the stars and all that, you'll get a different answer, right? And of course, public transportation is always crucial when we talk about a city's landscape when it comes to transit and mobility. And there's been a lot of conversation about, hey, do we need rail on the Beltline, or we don't need rail on the Beltline? And as always, I'm interested in hearing different perspectives. So we're going to have a very cordial and respectful conversation. I sound like my mama, but that's okay. So we're going to talk about it. Why or why not? I'm joined on by Hans Klein, Associate Professor in the School of Public Policy at Georgia Tech, and his research focuses on institutions and policy processes around what he calls large technical systems. He'll explain that in a moment. And then Janice Darling from Beltline Rail Now, also the committee chair for Inman Park Transportation. So welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Janice, I'm going to start with you. Is it fair to say the Inman Park community is fairly split when we talk about supporting rail on the Beltline? This is through your lens now.
I think there's a small group of people who
Can y'all hear?
I think there's a small group of people who don't agree that we should have rail on the Beltline. Mm-hmm. They're pretty vocal. And so because they're vocal, the Beltline Rail Now group has formed a pro-rail group recently for Inman Park. And we would like for our voice to be heard as well. I don't know that it's evenly split. I think one group may have been louder than another.
Mm-hmm. And I want you all to note that back on March 19th, we were told a representative from Beltline Inc. would join us. We were told that. But yesterday informed nobody was available. And so, Janice, we appreciate you stepping up on such short notice. I want to just put that disclosure out there. Professor, you have long maintained that the Beltline needs to be preserved for what you say solely are park space or green space. Why?
Yeah, the Beltline is a wonderful linear park for the city of Atlanta. It's our crown jewel of green space. It's created a pedestrian culture. It's created a bicycle culture in the city. It has 2 million visits per year. All of that was unanticipated. The Beltline was originally thought to be a rail corridor. And that vision of a rail corridor, I think, is out of date, and it's been disproven by events. We now have something, a spectacular park, and it's really important to preserve that park without compromising transit, right? We can still have great transit in the city. In fact, I think we'd have better transit in the city if we would allocate some of the funds that are thought to be used for rail on the Beltline, allocate those to their best use in transit, and preserve the park as a park.
We'll talk about that in a moment, but I want to go back because, as we all know, if you don't know, this came out of a thesis project for Ryan Gravel, but it always had a concept of having rail as part of this. But you say it's outdated in 2020, in this space we're in, this time we're in now?
Yeah. 20 years ago, the vision was a rail corridor. I sometimes compare this to, I guess, 50 years ago, Freedom Parkway. The vision was for it to be the Stone Mountain Freeway. It was going to be a beautiful freeway. It was going to carry a lot of traffic through Inman Park. That early vision of the freeway turned out not to be great, and we've got something much better. The early vision of the Beltline alignment as a rail corridor has been superseded by the reality of the Beltline as a wonderful green linear park for children, for cyclists, for scooters, for dogs, for everybody. So I think that the vision has changed. The original vision has been outdated. Shirley Franklin made that point recently at a public event. She said, listen, plans change. We get better ideas over time, and I think that's what's happened with the Beltline.
But I want to be clear, but you're not speaking for her in terms of whether or not she's for or against. I want to be very clear about that.
I would never do that for Mayor Franklin.
Because she will text me.
That's right. She
and I'm going to give her your
commit.
number.
She's an elected official and a smart one. No, she did not take a specific position.
Now, Janice, you hear what the professor says, but in one of the main arguments opposing rail, we hear that some feel it would be harder to have more pathways available. I'm curious, when we talk about if we want to have a separate path for cyclists, maybe that would be more, I'll be honest with you, I love the Beltline. I live near it. I'm on it almost every day. It is a lot of folks on there, that's true, but it was not designed just for me. So is there do you think, if we don't get light rail on the Beltline, do we have a separate path for folks on the wheels, and that way everyone else can enjoy it and it's less crowded? Would you support something like that, or you don't want anything done to it? Would you support a separate path where the light rail would go?
So I agree. The Beltline is awesome, and it's crowded. I love going on it too, riding my bike, walking, taking my kids. It's amazing. And I can imagine a grass bed rails running next to it, grass bed that absorbs pollution, absorbs carbon, absorbs dust, absorbs noise. I can imagine quiet, electric, beautiful streetcars running on that, parallel to the path that we have right now. A grass bed fits with the park aesthetic. It would be beautiful. We could still have the path that we have and the green space that we have, and we can have a beautiful rail line next to it.
So so for folks who say, well, but you already mentioned it's crowded, if the argument is that we need rail on this, would it also perhaps not displace, I don't know anybody being displaced in Emmett Park, but would it cause problems for homeowners? You've heard that argument that people say, well, this will impact maybe my value of my home, or.
So so I'm on the transportation committee, and I've been on it since I've moved to Emmett Park 22 years ago. And 22 years ago, we were worried about crosswalks, repainting them, making sure that people could cross. Our mission and our goal is to make sure that people can move around Emmett Park safely and efficiently. Cars, bikes, people who walk. We were aware when Beltline Rail, when the vision came out, we started thinking about that because how people move through our neighborhood is impacted by the Beltline pretty significantly. So we saw that as part of our planning. What we're experiencing now with Inman Quarter, with all of the development going on, with Krog District, with people moving into our neighborhood, is a lot of traffic and a lot of parking issues. And what we're experiencing now with the Transportation Committee is way different than what we had 20 years ago.
But wouldn't you say every neighborhood is experiencing that sometimes?
Yeah, I would. And we have to have a different way of moving people around Atlanta to deal with that influx of people.
When you talk to your neighbors in this community who are against rail on the Beltline, what do you hear from them?
I hear it's expensive. I hear that the money could be moved somewhere else, that they like it the way it is, and they don't want it to change.
That's the only reason?
Well, that's what I hear.
Okay, that's what you hear. All right. Professor Klein, the Beltline has long been envisioned, we talked about this, as a transportation corridor. Now, if this rail component is modeled after what you've been in other cities, right? They have something like this, so why couldn't it work? Why won't this work in Atlanta, having light rail on the Beltline? You say it works in other places.
Right. So it's a question, in part, there's the negative, it will hurt our wonderful emerald necklace. But even purely as transit, it's not a great transit solution to the problems that Atlanta faces.
Why?
First of all, fabulously expensive. It's $100 million per mile. That is top dollar for transit. The other technologies that MARTA is using is rubber-wheeled bus rapid transit. It's running those in Campbellton Road, Clifton Corridor, through the Summerhill neighborhood. You get much more bang for your buck, so it costs less, you get it faster deployment, and if it's done right, you give it a dedicated alignment, it's as efficient as rail transit. So it's very expensive. Secondly, the extension of the streetcar.
Where do you get
there's
those
not much
numbers
demand.
from? I'm just curious. The 100 million.
That's on the MARTA website.
Okay.
And actually, I would guess with inflation, it's well past 100 million by now. Those numbers are probably 5 years old. So
Okay.
it's terribly expensive. There's not that much demand. With all due respect to Inman Park, there's more demand in South Atlanta for transit because there's more people of the lower income neighborhoods that really rely on transit to get to work and back.
But wouldn't having light rail be able to connect those people from the communities that you just mentioned? Wouldn't? No, I'm just. Here y'all go. I'm just. So, but wouldn't that be a positive to help connect that side of town? Because I hear from people and they say, "Look, I don't care about the Beltline because guess what? I can't get to it."
Right. So what would be great is to have transit to the Beltline, but not transit on the Beltline. Let's preserve the Beltline as a beautiful linear park, but let's bring transit to the Beltline absolutely so that we give access to as many people as possible. That's equitable. And I think you're going to get to that point because the mayor had something to say about that on Monday, about getting people to the Beltline. But I think, so the current plan, it's expensive. There's not that much demand. Comparatively speaking, there's less demand on the Beltline than there is on some of the other neighborhoods. You're distributing public funds. Inman Park is a wealthy neighborhood. That's fine. I respect that. But it might be better and more equitable to distribute public funds more to the west side of Atlanta or the south side of Atlanta. West side of Atlanta is really underserved by transit, and there are some
Well, that ain't
more
new.
MARTA projects.
That's not new.
Well, let's change it.
But
we got $230 million in play.
So again, and I just want to give an answer. I want to give an opportunity to answer this. The part of connecting all of this is to ensure that folks then have an opportunity to move from those underserved communities. Maybe there are jobs over here. I just want to give you an opportunity to fully explain why that is not a good option.
Yeah. Bringing the crucial thing, you can think of the Beltline or transit in Atlanta as radial spokes or cross-town routes and then a great circle route around the city. The way you're going to serve the public, rich or poor, is you're going to invest in radial routes and crosstown routes. Those give you the most transit bang for the buck. Those serve the greatest amount of demand. Doing the radial circular route is not a great investment in transit, plus it has the downside of compromising the park, which is our radial circular beltline. So therefore, the investments are better made. What MARTA's doing on Campbellton Road, Summerhill, Clifton Corridor is terrific. Those are all radial and crosstown routes, and that's the kind of thing we should make the investment in. For instance, other more MARTA projects include North Avenue, which is a very heavily trafficked east-west corridor,
Sure.
and North Side Drive on the west side of town that also would really benefit from more transit investment.
When you say transit investment, are you just focusing on bus rapid? Is that the solution there? Because let's be clear, sometimes MARTA is a little bit off schedule, sometimes. Let's be clear, there are some communities that don't have sidewalks to catch MARTA. Let's be clear. There's some communities that don't have bus shelters on the areas where there are no sidewalks to catch MARTA.
Yeah. So
MARTA's got to fix some things,
so a
too.
couple of things about bus rapid transit. It's very unfortunate that it's named bus. If it was called rubber-wheeled trolleys, that would be actually a better characterization of what it is. I think there's a lot of people that have a predisposition away from bus, but we're talking about what's crucial is the alignment. You put a dedicated alignment, and then you run any vehicle on it, be it rail or bus, you're going to have effective transit if it doesn't get tangled up in traffic. If it's rubber-wheeled vehicles, they're less expensive, they get deployed faster, it's a better transit.
All right, Jess, want to come back over here with the professor? I just say, anything pop in your mind where you're like, dude, that ain't it?
We have an opportunity that most cities don't have. We have 22 miles of connected right-of-way, no traffic. There will be no traffic on this. It's already set up. We have the vision. We have the plan. We're in design right now. We're in implementation. We have the funding. It's ready to go. We're 30% through design. We're now at the place where everybody has an opportunity. The public can get on board and say what we want this to look like. What do we want the trail to look like? What do we want the trolley to look like? Where do we want the stops to be? And then we can figure out these tricky intersections. That's part of the design. But if we move now, we can get this in place soon. There's no reason to postpone this. The other thing I want to come back to is this idea of having transportation on wheels next to the linear park. That requires paving. That requires creating a road next to the belt line that we have now. That is going to be a heat trap. It's going to be ugly. And it's basically creating a road. And I don't think we need a road. I think we need transit. We need a way to move people, connect them through Atlanta. And this moves people. It moves them fast. It moves them efficiently. And it gets them from place to place with no traffic. It gets them off the road.
Professor?
It only gets you off the road if you're driving in a circle around Atlanta, you'll be able to get on a future on transit in a circle around Atlanta. But most of the traffic is not a circumferential route around the city. So it doesn't match demand. It's true, it would be beautiful to have a right of way, an uninterrupted right of way, but unfortunately it goes in the wrong places. It doesn't address our transit needs. It doesn't address our transportation needs. That's fundamental to it. And we got this beautiful park. We're going to really compromise the park. One of the design features of rail, and MARTA's been pretty strict about this, they say we're going to have a safety fence running alongside this rail. That means that's going to cut off, it's going to actually divide neighborhoods except at specific crossings.
MARTA never
but other
said
than
that.
Yeah, they said
That's
it
part of the
they said it
design.
at a MARTA meeting at MARTA headquarters that they're high priority on safety, and that safety feature is the fence that they're going to have.
That has not been designed yet. That's part of the design. The only thing that's been committed to right now is that it will be a trolley car and the route is set. Everything else will be in that 70% design, including the barriers.
Professor?
Yeah, and let me one more thing. Thanks for the rebuttal. Let me rebut something. The funding for transit on the Beltline is by no means allocated. Right now, there's a potential to build these 2.3 miles, about 1 mile, about half of that is actually on the Beltline. To do the entire Beltline would cost over $2 billion. We have not identified the source of that $2 billion yet, but I can assure you, if we spend $2 billion on a circumferential route, you're not going to see any radial transit. You're not going to see any crosstown transit. In fact, it would be damaging to transit in the city as a whole if we deploy transit in that radial Beltline route.
Do you think ultimately there will be rail on the Beltline? Do you think it's going to happen?
No.
Janice?
Absolutely. It has to happen. We have to get people off the road. We have to connect neighborhoods. And this idea that you have to drive in a circle is crazy. I went up to Ansley Park for a happy hour at my girlfriend's house. I rode my bike.
Ooh, where
there.
she live? I want to go.
Oh, it was quite nice. We ended up staying way longer than we had intended. And I had ridden my bike there because that's what I like to do, on the Beltline through Piedmont Park. We had a little bit too much to drink. I came out, it was drizzling, and it was dark. And I had my bike. And I thought, this would be really nice to be able to get on a streetcar and take it home with my bike. The streetcar that is going to allow me to ride my bike right onto it. I'm not going in a circle. I'm going from Ansley Park to Inman Park, which is where people travel to, neighborhood to neighborhood.
Do you think a big part is opposition, as we begin to wrap up? Do you think a big part of the opposition as well, Jan, is that this is an issue of class as well?
I do, absolutely.
Professor,
I do.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Say what you want to say. That's what this show is for. Ain't nobody gonna bother you. We got security here.
We are lucky to have a mayor who has this future vision. This is going to transform Atlanta. If we get this right, this is going to be mind-blowingly different than what it is now. We are going to be able to prove to people that Atlanta can do big things. We did the airport. We did the Olympics. We put the MARTA trail path that we are train system that we have in place now. All of those massively expensive, transformed our city. This is one of those opportunities, and he sees it, and I think we need to go for it.
Race and class, absolutely. We're talking about spending $250 million of public funds. Let's be frank, folks. Northeast Atlanta, it's the wealthiest quadrant of the city, and it is the whitest quadrant of the city as well. Let's spend money where incomes are lower, and frankly, let's serve people of color and neighborhoods of color with this money.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about equity in our next segment. Hans Klein, associate professor in the School of Public Policy at the Georgia Institute of Technology, as we plain folks say, Georgia Tech, and also Janice Darling from Beltline Rail Now, and the committee chair for Inman Park Transportation. Good conversation, compelling. I appreciate you all being very cordial. This is what this program is all about. Thank you. We're back in a moment.
Thank you.
Support for WABE comes from Brown University's pre-college program, where high school students can prepare for college success, experience college life, and make new friends from around the world. More than 300 courses are available. precollege.brown.edu. And from Visit St. Pete Clearwater, where you can find farm fresh produce, artisan food trucks, live music, arts and crafts, and so much more at the St. Pete Saturday Morning Market. More at visitstpeteclearwater.com. And from Live Nation, welcoming My Morning Jacket together on stage with Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats at Ameris Bank Amphitheater on Saturday, September 19th. Tickets on sale now at livenation.com.
Savor the flavors of paradise with a side of endless horizons when you win a trip for 5 nights of accommodations at the beautiful Calabash Cove Resort and Spa in St. Lucia. You'll discover the soul-stirring beauty of St. Lucia by taking in the beautiful beaches, the majestic peaks of the mountains, and the hidden gems awaiting your exploration. Everyone who donates during the WABE Spring Member Campaign is entered into a drawing for a trip for 2. Visit wabe.org/St. Lucia for details.
On the next Fresh Air, Beyoncé's new country album is bringing new attention to the under-recognized contributions of Black performers in country music. Featured on banjo and viola is Rhiannon Giddens. We'll listen back to Giddens when she was a member of the Carolina Chocolate Drops, playing music inspired by the black string band tradition of the 20s and 30s. Join us this afternoon at 2 on 90.1 WABE.
You're listening to Closer Look live from Inman Park neighborhood, where we're at Stereo. Located at 900 DeKalb Avenue, Northeast. I am Rose Scott. It's our monthly conversation, Coffee Conversations with Rose Scott. And of course, we're in partnership with the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. So thank you all for always showing up. We really appreciate it. Now, when we talk about transit and mobility, there's always this equity piece, right? What does it look like? And for some people, if they say, well, what's the difference between equality and inequity? I'll get an email about that. Well, that's what I want you all to understand. When we talk about equity, folks, it starts acknowledging that, look, we all don't come from the same place and we all don't start from the same place, right? So therefore, we have to recognize and maybe make corrections to the imbalances. That's what equity is about. And if you disagree, then send your email to somebody else because I don't want it. Now, how does that, thank you, how does that occur in a transit plan for a city, say like Atlanta? Well, we're going to talk about it. Charles Peterson is the Just Opportunity Associate with the Partnership for Southern Equity, also with Ford Atlanta Urbanite Mobility. We'll talk about that in a moment. Also, Segura Jones, Program Director with Propel ATL. And this is a mobility advocacy group with the focus to transform, I love this, Atlanta streets into safe, inclusive, and thriving spaces for people to ride, walk, and roll. That means scooters, right?
Everything. House, you can roll on skateboards, rollerblades.
Yeah, I'm all for the skateboards and rollerblades. All right. I'm just kidding. And Kenneth Florence of the Red Bike and Green. This is a collective of Black urban cyclists with the mission, as they see it, to improve the health, economy, and local environment of Black Atlantans. Welcome. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kenneth, let me start with you. When we talk about equity and we talk about a city like Atlanta and its transit plan and its mobility plan, tell me what you like and tell me what's missing.
Well, what I like, I really feel like what's missing, because to get to what I like is, I don't like a lot. I feel that education of all drivers is what's missing. Us here at Red, White, and Green, we're not like your traditional advocacy organization. We mostly provide more so experiences and knowledge to our ridership. And with that, you know, having those experiences on a bike, or say like if you're a pedestrian or any alternative forms of transportation, basically will allow you to become more of an advocate towards creating a new space on how transit should look. And I believe that education or a movement towards better driver education and drivers in all the ways that mean is what we should be focused on.
Let me ask you this. Is Atlanta a bike-friendly city?
I would not say it's a bike-friendly city, but it is become, since I've been riding here since 2012, much more friendly than before in terms of infrastructure, but I don't believe that the energy and the spirit of the people has changed. I actually think it's gotten worse since I've lived here.
So, Gira, when we talk about equity, what does that look like? Is Atlanta, are we on the right path? What's missing?
I told you I wasn't going to start anything at the beginning of this, but
do what you want.
First, I'd like to say thank you to those that stayed, because while the Beltline Rail is a hot topic right now, transportation equity is a needed topic. So thank you to those in the room that decided to stay to hear this conversation. I think that what needs to happen in Atlanta is that we need to get clear on what equity actually is. People have different versions of what it means to them, and we need to have a definition that the city can strive for, and therefore those departments and agencies that serve the city can also understand what that means, and that is rooted in talking to the people that are most disadvantaged, that have historically been disadvantaged by the use of the word all. Recently had a conversation with Partnership for Southern Equity and Policy Link, and thinking through what that means when you say all, because a lot of times people use the term all as a way to oppress people. And so when you say all, what do you really mean? Who do you mean? And how do you serve those people?
Wow, thank you. Charles?
Absolutely. Same question?
Yeah.
So grateful for the opportunity. Thinking about the way in which we approach the work of the Partnership for Southern Equity, I can say that equity first looks like finding out, thank you for acknowledging the harm that's been done, right, the history behind it. But if I came in this room and I gave a bike to everybody, same size bike, we could call that equality. But understanding the needs and the varying needs of the different people in the room, whether it's a size, the different capabilities, then we'd be talking about an equity conversation. And so applying that to the transportation and the mobility conversation really requires that I actually find out, one, what folks need, right, within their community. But most importantly, you talk about acknowledging the harm. We start with how has transit been impacted in communities, whether it's the bifurcation of communities with highways and the development, right? Or if it's new development or quote unquote hotspots, and how they've impacted the lived experiences of folks and how it impacts their day-to-day life.
I had someone email me about a couple of days ago. It said Atlanta seems to only want to get things right when there's something big coming. And then they said, i.e., World Cup. And it got me to thinking, when you think about all the major achievements for this city, and we've had big projects, whether it be the Olympics coming here, the Beltline, or even the building of a Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is an economic generator. And I've asked communities, do you feel like you had input? And y'all know, I will get, no, we didn't feel like our voices were heard.
That's right.
So in this equity piece, Charles, I'll stay with you. And I just had a conversation with MPU leaders, and everyone says the same thing. Well, we got to show up, and we got to, get in the room, and we got to have a seat at the table, and we got to be allowed to talk while we're sitting at the table.
Mm-hmm.
In this equity piece, how do you get the cries, the demands, the concerns for the community into the right spaces with the policymakers and the leaders, other than the NPU association?
Absolutely. And so keeping it with our work and our approach at the Partnership for Southern Equity, we consider ourselves to be grand organizers, right? At the very root of who we are, we're values-based organizers. And so we want to organize around the issues. With that, we think about power as the organization of people. And so you say, how do you get the cries into the room, or how do you elevate those or amplify those voices? The first thing is that you create spaces for the voice to be heard. Not just meaning that I will, craft a meeting, a container for folks to show up, but if I'm being equitable, how do I get to the people who are maybe homebound? How do I meet folks where they are if their working schedule requires them to get up at 5 a.m., not return till 7 p.m.? What spaces have I crafted for them to hear their voice, their concern?
So, with the work y'all have done at Propel ATL, you all feel like you have a good listening ear, and that you have some great collaboration with policy leaders, city leaders. And if you can, I want to give you an opportunity then to point to something that say, hey, Rose, here's an example of when we all came together and got something done.
So I'd like to say that when things work well, it's because community leads. It's not about what we do as an organization, it's about who we listen to. One of the best examples is on Hollowell Parkway. There's a transportation project for that through GDOT, where they were looking at the road and the infrastructure piecemeal, and the community said, that's not what we want. We want a holistic approach. This is a full-size corridor. And so residents organized themselves and got neighborhoods, MPUs, elected officials that represented the entire corridor of Hollowell, from the city all the way out to Fulton Industrial, and said, we're working together. Mm-hmm. And that was some of the best engagement I ever seen, because they took the lead, because they invited the agencies and the elected officials in and said, this is what we want, and this is how it needs to be done, and this is why. And so when you're thinking about whether it's an advocacy organization or some other community-based organization or elected officials or policymakers, you really have to let community lead, because they're the ones with the lived experience. And doing that, front-loading with that, provides people the opportunity to really listen, find out the information, and then build and plan from there, and allows people to have their voices heard. It's that concept of, we're not asking you to come to our table, people are going to build their own table.
Mm. Kenneth, you told me earlier, moments ago, you feel like educating people, particularly drivers, because that's the mindset. And I remember years ago when we started this conversation about the whole mobility and transit landscape, we always started with, how do you change people's mindset? Mm-hmm. Drivers have a mindset, and let's be clear, and I don't want to be one-sided, some of y'all out here on these bikes, y'all got y'all whole other agenda going on. So how do you get people? I've seen a guy on a bike cut off a MARTA bus. I'm like, bruh, you living dangerously.
Indeed, we all need better education.
So how do you propose we do that?
I don't really have a proposal for that, but I do think that our approach should be to focus on getting better driver education as a whole. And pointing out, things like within our communities, when we're doing our rides, we try to teach people what is dangerous for them, like on a bike versus, other things.
Does the city need more bike lanes?
I think bike lanes are helpful. They are a very good place to make people comfortable on bike. But when the bike lanes run out, you're right back in the danger zone. Mm-hmm. So that education and that knowledge, is just as important as having safe bike lanes, protected bike lanes, et cetera.
I've heard some people in communities say, Rose, I'm not against bikers, but bike lanes are great, but we have other I guess, issues that need to be addressed first, like sidewalks, like
Absolutely.
bus shelters, like a pathway to the Beltline so I can ride my bike.
Yeah, I think with proper education, any road could be safe. I think if you are considerate about your fellow person and your fellow motorist, then it'll be much safer. Yes, we definitely need sidewalks. There's people in wheelchairs or other rolling vehicles who sidewalks just in. They just stop. How do you move? They might have to go back another half mile just to get where they're going. So I absolutely agree that sidewalks and pedestrian also needs to be focused on as well.
Charles, do you think folks really understand when we tie in quality of life and economics to transit and mobility and what that looks like at the intersection of a community that has fewer resources or that is considered a low-income community? Do you think folks really understand how mobility and transit impacts that? Lack of thereof, and if you add more, how it helps.
I don't know if folks fully understand it, but I found a data point that's particularly interesting from the Center of Neighborhood Technology, really around home affordability. If you think about home affordability and the metric that we like to say is that if a person or family uses 30% or less of their income, right, to afford housing, then they live in an affordable neighborhood. And by that metric, the Center for Neighborhood Technology says that 55% of America's neighborhoods are affordable. But if we factor in transportation costs and mobility and access, that number goes from 55% to 29%, right? And so maybe we don't always read the data and we're able to see the numbers and read the story, which is the necessity for also that qualitative point of how do the numbers articulate the lived experiences and the stories of the folks moving around.
So, Gira, we know that Atlanta is a city that has an unbelievable income inequality gap. And if you think I'm making it up, I'm not. But this is some information that I found. Those at the 80th percentile earn at least $172,000, while those at the 20th percentile make $29,000. Yet we always hear Atlanta is this city that influences everything, is this great hub for culture and technology, but that income equality gap and mobility and transit play a part in that.
It does. So Atlanta is a great city. It is a great cultural hub. It is very influential, and also I'm trying to think of the number. I just looked at it. I think it is 33% of jobs that Black people have access to are north of I-20. But it takes over an hour to get there by transit. So that's for high-paying jobs. Those percentages increase for medium-paying jobs and low-paying jobs. So it's not just about income inequality. That's a whole nother topic. But how do you get access to those jobs? So that's why transit is so important, because as more people come in, as more people look to Atlanta as a place to live, as a cultural center, as a place of opportunity, you're going to have to be able to move people around, and you're going to have to get people to the places where they can have access to that opportunity. And to the point of driver education, one of the things that it helps is when people actually get out of their cars and they experience what it's like to bike, what it's like to walk, and understand the dangerous conditions. And I've had conversations with people that became more aware of their driving habits after using public spaces. And so that's something that is of importance as well.
So then this is the part of the conversation where we try to figure it out in like the next 6 minutes. But if we're talking about what this city is going to look like, let's say in 10 years, what is the absolute critical piece of infrastructure as it relates to mobility and transit that needs to have either been finished or is well on in implementation? It could be Braille on the Beltline, I don't know. What is that?
So interestingly enough, I don't have a particular opinion about the particular method. What I'm concerned about is mobility. So when we talk about mobility, I think about it from the frame of, do people have access to health care? Do they have access to education? Do they have access to jobs? Do they have access to green space? So I'm agnostic about the particular methods or technologies. What I want for people here in Atlanta is to be able to get to where they need to go so that they can have those opportunities, so that they can flourish. To me, that is what equity is about. How do people actually have opportunity to thrive?
Kenneth?
I agree. Completely agree. I think that there's no particular piece of infrastructure for me. I think that the amount in our communities, like we're based in the West End, we are mostly just trying to be able to access the resources that are currently here. Again, the bike infrastructure isn't as prevalent there. Sidewalk infrastructure isn't prevalent there. So to say that there's one piece, whether it be just the Beltline without the transit, would be great. As we are not we're getting new lines on the west side and everything like that. But any particular, I don't have a.
You just wanted to get better.
I wanted to get better. Yeah.
Right. Charles?
So I take a similar stance on that, but I do recognize that the work that we originally mentioned, the Urbanite Project for the Partnership for Southern Equity, creates space for everyday citizens, entrepreneurs, folks moving in and out of Atlanta to propose a solution that will then convert into a pilot that's funded at about $150,000. And through this partnership, what we're asking folks to do is, what problems do you think or what solutions do you have to the mobility challenges in Atlanta? Now, quite frankly, $150,000 won't fund flying cars, right? But it does, over a period of about 9 months, allow us to launch a pilot in which we can say, hey, this works. Here's the opportunity for sustainability. Here's a place that we can connect. And it's accessible, and the proposal is not meant to be a 20-page long, drawn-out process that requires a graphic designer. It's a fill-in-the-blank form that every single person has the opportunity and access to do.
You two are representing organizations. Are you all staying out of the light rail or more rail on the Beltline spirited debate? Yes, go ahead, Charles.
We are staying out of the debate. However, we're on the side of what the people choose as the best opportunity, right? We want to know what the people believe should be the solution. Because similar to the earlier point, the people closest to the problem have the solution.
All right. Sagira?
Same. We're focused on, do people have safe places to use public spaces, and can they get where they need to go without worrying about death or injury or harm? And can they have an opportunity to grow and flourish? That's what's important. We can talk about all the different areas of town, what their needs are, and the disinvestment, but at this point, that's a broken record. People know what that is. At this point, if we're talking about transportation equity, we need to apply what we know about engaging people, about transportation equity, and we need to actually apply that and build some projects that can actually give people a better life.
All right. Do you want to weigh in on the rail on the Beltline, Kenneth? I don't want to leave you out.
I'm personally in support of rail on the Beltline. I can just say that I'm supportive of all rapid transit everywhere.
All right, I appreciate that. Now, before we wrap up, I do have another important question for you. You have a T-shirt. Is that for me?
I do have this T-shirt for you. You asked about it.
Rose Scott, getting to the heart of the questions. Is this all right? A cool red bike and green shirt. That is, yeah, that's what's up. And it's mine. Listen, I know there are more conversations to be had about this, and I really appreciate you all coming and taking the time. I appreciate this incredible audience. Don't worry, folks. We're still going to continue this conversation because we know it's one of importance. And listen, I always say that we don't know what's going on unless we hear from you all. This conversation came from a lot of emails that I get from people, so keep those emails coming as long as they're positive. And as long as they're positive. And so to that I say that's it for this edition of Closer Look. Our producers are LaShawn Hudson, Daniel Razel, Tiffany Griffith. Our engineer over there, nobody ever gets to really see him, Sawyer Vanderworth. Who's also a DJ, right, Sawyer? Yeah, he'll be on afterwards. And a reminder, let me know your thoughts on today's program and the others. Send me an email at community@wabe.org. And also now, pay attention to this too. We are looking for more coffee cafes, coffee shops. Again, I cannot come to your house. Mr. Winter Smith, who keeps emailing me, but I love you though. And you can listen to Closer Look weeknights at 7 p.m. as well as on our podcast, so subscribe wherever you like. Thank you to Stereo and everybody here. Stay tuned. Come on, y'all can clap. Stay tuned to 90.1 from WABE in Atlanta. I'm Rose Scott.
From WHYY in Philadelphia, this is Fresh Air. I'm David.